Okay. We are coming to you live today. I have no idea if this is going to work. I need to figure out how to share the video so anybody can see it. So let me do that. I'm sharing the video with my class. And we'll see how doing this live goes. All right. So feel free to pop a comment into the chat while I'm going through this stuff. If you have any questions, I'll try to respond. Or just to say hi, that's okay too. So we're talking today about evidence in medicine for history and philosophy of science and medicine. As a reminder, I'm Matt Brown. And what we're really looking at today is focusing primarily on the American medical system. How is knowledge sort of justified in order to sort of result in decisions about medical treatment? Hi, Cal. So I'm going to start just by describing what a randomized control trial is. Let's break it down. Okay, randomized control trial. Trial is we're testing typically a drug or sometimes a procedure or other kind of medical technology to see whether one, it's effective, and two, it's safe. In the American medical system, the way this typically goes is you have preclinical trials, which explore the chemistry of a drug or the mechanisms of a technology. They might apply it first to in vitro, just cultures of living tissue, and then in vivo in animals. And then there are typically three phases of trials. One is, so phase one trials are smaller, phase two trials are a little bigger, and phase three's trials are the largest. Phase one trials tend to just look for really obvious safety issues. They tend not to be big enough even to judge for efficacy. Phase two gives you a sense about efficacy of the drug, whether it's effective, whether it works. And then phase three trials is where you really establish the kind of evidence that you need. Okay, so that's the trials part of randomized control trials. They are control, right? Typically means that they use a placebo control design, right? So you separate the group in your study into two populations, the control and the intervention population. The intervention population gets the drug that you're testing or the procedure that you're testing, and the control population typically gets placebo, right? That means something that kind of looks like or acts like the treatment, but is not expected to have any effect, right? It could be a pill, right? If your drug is a pill, it could be a pill with no active ingredients in it. It's just filler material, basically. Could be a for surgical techniques and other kinds of things you might be testing, it's more complicated, but they do in fact sometimes do sham surgeries or other kinds of fake interventions. The ethics there is a little weird, something we might get into in class. Sometimes when you're testing a drug, you can't use a placebo control because there is a standard of treatment that is so effective already that it's not at all ethical or reasonable to give a placebo to someone who has the condition. And so in those cases, we tend to recommend that you compare to the standard of care. That kind of trial is actually quite uncommon. It's pretty easy for pharmaceutical companies and others who are trying to get approval to argue that a placebo control trial is fine, but it's problematic. Hi, Virginia or Jenny, good to see you. So I've talked about so in terms of randomized control trials, I've talked about control, I've talked about trial. Now randomization is another part of control, I guess you could say. What randomization controls for is all the other factors that might interfere with your study, right? So factors, maybe genetic factors, particular biological features of the patients, could be lifestyle factors, could be other kind of complicating conditions, could be gender, could be any number of things. And the way that we ensure that there's roughly the same sort of distribution of those factors in the in the intervention population and the control population is we randomize, right? Now, as the readings for today indicate, randomization is nowhere near perfect as a way of doing this, right? So sometimes actually you might want to explicitly balance the you might want to explicitly balance the number in each arm of the trial. But the reason we do randomization, mainly it's simpler than balancing, and also it controls for those factors that we don't know about. I'm worried my microphone is too quiet, but I don't see a way to edit that. I hope you can hear me just fine. My little dots are quite low on the meter, so I don't know. I'll bring the microphone up a little bit. Okay, that's randomized control trials. And as far as the American medical system is concerned, as far as also European medicine for the most part, FDA approval, those sorts of things, the randomized control trial is the standard, the gold standard. It's used not only for approval in regulatory approval, but also in hospitals and insurance companies and various other kinds of settings to determine what the best treatment for any given disease is, right? So they want to say that you either need to show one or more randomized controlled trials that show safety and efficacy of your drug as compared to placebo, or even better as compared to other options. Even better than a one or two randomized control trials is a meta-analysis over multiple trials that actually allows them to combine the subjects from multiple trials and run the statistics to get an even better body of evidence. Okay. So that's the medical evidence system as it exists. It's this evidence-based medicine ranking of meta-analysis first, randomized control trials second, and then kind of every other type of evidence or knowledge that you can have lower. And although, different rankings will rank those other things in different ways and say that they, have a certain status, for the most part, nothing under randomized control trials matters to the evidence-based medicine approach. In practice, that's how it works. Okay, so there's a number of issues. I'm not going to try to summarize all of the issues brought up in our 3 readings for today, but I'll mention a few. One kind of argument is that the randomized control trials are not the best way of dealing with confounding variables, right? That it matters a lot, the particular circumstances that we have. Another kind of problem is what might be called a problem of external validity. So the trials that are done, they not only randomize, they not only try to balance the different types of potentially interfering factors, they also pre-screen. So they try to actually eliminate patients from the trial who might be too complicated to do the study on. So for example, if I am running a trial on blood pressure medication, right? I want a population of patients who have hypertension, so that I can see if this medication does better than placebo, or or which among a number of medications does better for reducing blood pressure, right, amongst these hypertensive patients. But I might try to screen out patients who are um, diabetic. I might want to screen out patients who have a history of heart disease. I might try to screen out um, other, patients who are taking other medications for other conditions, because those things might interfere with getting clean data about the effectiveness of the drug. Um, which, from a certain scientific point of view makes sense, right? There's a certain justification for that. It's misled us in the past, right? This kind of screening is one of the reasons why we didn't have women in medical trials for a long time. That's a problem. But basically, the issue, basically the problem is people who you're going to be treating in the world are not so neat, right? The patients that doctors are going to see, some of them are going to be diabetic. Some of them are going to have high cholesterol or heart disease. Some of them are going to be on one or two or three or 10 other medications, right? Some of them are going to be alcoholics. Some of them are going to, there's an endless number of things that might be screened for, but that your actual people you're trying to help are going to have. So then you might say, well, that's actually means that although you showed a neat causal relationship in your study, you didn't actually do the hard job of showing that it's going to work in practice, right? And so that notion of pragmatic trials that comes up is trying to respond to that. It's trying to actually use a more realistic population to have more external validity. Those kinds of studies are harder to get to work, to get to an effect, but maybe that's a good thing. That's a question. You can see how there's inductive risk issues all over the place here, false positive and false negative kinds of errors that you have to weigh, right? Pragmatic trials are going to have a lot more false negatives because it's going to be harder to get an effect, right? But on the other hand, they're going to have greater external validity. When you get a positive result, it's more likely that it's going to actually work in the real world. So lower false positive error rate in a certain sense, and for the population that you're interested in, which is the general population. Okay, those are some of the key issues. Of course, we'll talk more in class about other issues that came up in the readings. My hope is that when I end this stream, the video is still going to be available for you to watch. We'll see how that works. I've never done a live stream before, but if you came in partway through, I hope you'll kind of rewind at this point back to the beginning of the stream, if you can, so that you can see the whole thing. So that's what we talked about this time. If you have any quick questions that I can answer while other people are rewinding to the beginning in the chat, I'm happy to answer them now. I'll sort of let the stream run for just a couple minutes and see if there are any questions. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you next time. And I hope I'll be able to edit this down for the permanent version. You can rewind it. Okay, good. Thanks, Jordan. All right. Looks like there are no other questions. So I will catch up with all of you in a few minutes on Discord. See you then.